Well, my husband. He's about to leave me for another woman, and it's all my mother-in-law Teresa's fault. But the story gets a lot deeper than that. I find out a secret about his new girl, and it's going to wreck his world. And I don't think he's gonna believe me. But the crazy part about it, it's all true. I'm 29 and female and recently got divorced from my ex-husband, Richard, about half a year ago. I can still vividly remember that day, and yes, I'm still reeling from the loss of my husband. But my pride won't let me beg him to give us another chance. Especially not after what he and my mother-in-law Teresa did back to me. Back then, I did so much to get Richard to stay with me. I won't, make that mistake again. Then there's the fact that he's already deep into another relationship. In just 6 months, Richard had met, dated, and proposed to another woman, courtesy of Teresa. Richard and I did not have the best of marriages. We got married on a whim, and he realized soon that I was not the love of his life. I wasn't deeply in love with him either, but I am one of those people who believe that putting in the right amount of effort can move mountains, so I did everything I could to please Richard. We were civil with each other, and despite that not being that I wanted in a marriage, I swallowed my hopes of being blissfully happy and settled the peace. After all, it was better than most. Richard would go to work and I'd go to my shop, returning early so that my husband would have something to eat before going to sleep in his bedroom. His, not our, bedroom, by the way. We stopped sleeping in the same bed 2 years after our marriage, and I had to make do with the guest bedroom in the house. I realize now that I might have made Richard seem like, bitter and distant, but he wasn't. Well, not in the beginning at least. Richard made sure that we never lacked anything, and gave me the capital needed for a fashion business I started up, and was never once rude to the members of my own family. This was probably why I failed to see that he had a terrible side to him. But it was eventually clear to me when his mother started living with us. My mother-in-law never liked me, and I'm not entirely sure why. I could not exactly ask her unless I wanted to get ignored or insulted. Yes, her dislike for me was that bad. Richard always told me it was all in my head, but he was never around when she was unbelievably horrid. And whenever we were all in the same space, Teresa tended to behave well or avoid me. My best guess was that her precious son got married to a nobody like me. I was from a lower than middle class family and had struggled to finish college, not to mention being unemployed after everything. Richard's and my infatuation with each other caused him to make the biggest mistake of his life, according to Teresa at least. Teresa started to live with us for, about a year ago. It was not convenient for me because I decided to stop wasting my efforts and opt to give her the energy she gave me instead. But at the same time, I needed to keep my ex-husband in mind because I did not want to anger him. Teresa had other plans in mind, and she always complained that my cooking was bad and told me never to tell her how things were done in her own son's house. Ignoring her was not even an option because she would summon me whenever we were both home. No matter how much I tried reasoning with her, it was all in vain. That woman easily became a thorn in my side, and I know she's the reason why my husband ended things with me. Richard soon took notice of my disagreements with Teresa, and we began to argue because he believed that I was causing his mother unnecessary trouble. I'm not sure what Teresa told him, but I was not going to accept unmerited blame, no matter how much I hated conflict within my marriage. I think that was when I came to fully understand that Richard was putting his hand in a pot of boiling water if his mom asked him to. It was very disappointing, and one time, when I asked him why he always listened to the lies Teresa told him, he told me that he would always regret the one time that he disobeyed her, and I got what he meant and instantly remained quiet, wishing that I had never even asked. Well, in case you didn't get that, Teresa was the only person against my marriage to Richard 7 years ago. She told him that I was not good enough for him, had even threatened me to leave her son alone, and had once bribed me into leaving Richard alone since she knew that my family was not as well off as she was. In the end, Everything she did was in vain because Richard and I got married in court, and there was nothing more that she could do. Our infatuation with each other lasted for about a year, and after that, civility took over when our minds were clear. My divorce should not have come as a surprise to me, but it happened much sooner than I thought it would. Back then, I begged Richard, please Richard, not to throw away 7 years that we've spent together. Richard had told me that our court marriage was only an agreement and that he could not keep up with the sad excuse of our marriage. I told my widowed mother what he said when I called her in a panic, and she was absolutely furious, telling me to move back into the house as soon as I could, and Richard then proceeded to ask me for the capital he lent me to start up my business and seize my shop as well, claiming everything was all his. It was a dark moment in my life, and if not for my mom, I would not have made it out as strong as I did. I had loyal customers, so I was able to make my money from home, though it was not easy. Now, 6 months post-divorce, I got a last-minute invitation to Richard's wedding, and I'm almost sure it was all Teresa's doing. Unless Richard's dislike for me got worse, I did my research and found out that the woman he was getting married to, Amanda, was the daughter of a real estate business owner. For some reason, she was almost non-existent on social media and the internet, but then again, her family's rich, so it must have been that way for a reason. When I got my invitation, I thought of staying home and tossing it into the trash can, but that might translate to accepting defeat. What do you think? Should I go to the wedding? Why was I even invited? Or should I stay away and focus on getting my life together? Update number 1. Hey guys, I ended up going to the wedding, and I'm very glad that I did. I'll make the update as detailed as possible. I'm not even ashamed to admit that I'm literally anticipating the amount of pain Teresa's going through. I feel a bit sorry for Richard, but he did leave me because his mother said so I will not try to be bothered by it. I don't even know what came over me, but I ended up calling Richard the day after getting an invite. He told me that Teresa was actually the one responsible for the insisting to invite me, and I did not have to go if I did not want to. Teresa called me soon after, mocking me by asking if I knew who the bride was. I told her that I've done my research, and Teresa, quote, made me understand that this Amanda was better than me in every possible scenario. It was beyond infuriating, and I berated myself after the call for listening to that woman for the length of the time. After blaming it on an old habit, I went and told my mom my decision to go to the wedding. Mom was totally against it, and she told me that it would do me no good to go to the wedding, and after searching my brain for what seemed like forever, I told her that seeing Richard get married to someone else would give me the closure I needed. In reality, I just wanted to prove to Teresa that my life was better without her and her son in it. I was honestly just sick and tired of her constant attempts to kill my self-esteem as a person. Now that I think about it, I was trying to prove it to myself and not Teresa. The day of the wedding came, and I thought of wearing something drastic, like a white dress. To compete with the bride, or maybe black, as that would match my mood. I wore neither of those, however. As soon as I got to the church, I spotted old Teresa, and went to meet each other. The shock and irritation on her face on seeing me is something I'll never forget, and I shot her the biggest smile I could muster, and her expression gave me hope that I could at least last through the entire wedding. I didn't see Richard before the ceremony commenced, and which was most likely a good thing. I was sure of how my encounter with Teresa would play out, but not with Richard. The wedding was small, but I will admit it was a beautiful one. Mostly Richard's idea, I bet. But the highlight of it all was when I saw the bride. Have you ever seen someone and struggled so hard to remember where you saw them? As soon as Amanda's veil was lifted, my eyes remained on her face until it registered in my mind. Post-divorce, I spent a lot of time on my cell phone, mindlessly scrolling through videos that could cheer me up, and I came across one of a man who was bawling on camera about how he lost his money to a woman months after their marriage. There was a picture of her as well, and I could understand how a man would lose his mind after seeing such a beautiful woman. She had scammed him after gaining his trust and abandoned him soon after, and I sympathized with him because I'd lost a lot after my marriage. But at the same time, I wondered how much he loved that woman to have given her all the money that she owned. Maybe it's because I have not experienced this personally, but I found it to be completely ridiculous. The wedding was a smooth one, if you don't count the fact that I started chuckling when the couple exchanged vows. A few heads turned to my direction, but my mirth exceeded my embarrassment. I secretly hoped Teresa saw me, but I wasn't sure. What I made sure I did was congratulate her repeatedly on Richard's wedding, and this time she was confused. But I did not wait to see her reaction. I'd planned to do that if I made it through the wedding, but after seeing who Richard got married to, it gave me another reason to go on with my plan. I made eye contact with Richard before I left as well, and all I could manage was a small smile. I'll be honest, I was not completely happy that Richard was going to soon face serious problems. But who am I to change fate? If I had not attended, he would have gotten married to this Amanda, so there was really nothing that I could do. The first thing that I did, though, when I got home, I busted out some research. It took a while, but hey, guys, I found the Facebook account of the video that I saw, and it turns out that it was Amanda. She used a fake name in an entirely different state, and her hair was slightly darker in the picture, and she had quite a lot of makeup on. I'm not sure how scammers operate, but most likely, I would say, Amanda was not the woman's name, and she was going to disappear from Richard's life very soon after getting what she wanted from him. It took a while before I was able to sleep that night. I don't know why I felt so guilty over what I could not control. And I guess I'm also asking for a bit of advice on what to do. Should I tell Richard about it, or should I just remain quiet and accept that it's not in my control? Update number 2. It took a while before I saw Teresa and Richard again after the wedding, and Richard had called and asked for the rest of the money I was to pay to balance up the money that I've gotten from him to pay for my shop's rent. It was not a small amount given the fact that, well, I've had my shop for 5 years. Despite that, I managed to pay my quote debt monthly, but I was unable to meet the previous month's deadline. Normally, Teresa did this, reminding me to pay, and I dreaded her monthly calls, so I was surprised and a bit hurt when Richard called instead. I told him that I did not have all the money, knowing he would be understanding about it, unlike his mother. He told me to send whatever I had into his account, and I found that strange. Richard had never once been in urgent need of money. I found myself asking why he needed the money so suddenly. He told me Amanda had advised him to start buying stock and her father's company, as they were embarking on a new project that would be highly profitable for both families. I could not hold my tongue. I told him that Amanda was going to steal his money and that he should be careful with whatever investment he was making. Richard told me that Teresa had told him that I'd made an excuse to get out of paying what I've owed, and that annoyed me. I told Richard that I'd pay as soon as possible and ended the phone call. I don't know what I thought Richard would do after what I said, but I wasn't expecting total disbelief and insults. And I learned my lesson immediately after that phone call. I was not going to meddle again. That was until Amanda herself came to see me last week, and she introduced herself to me like I didn't know who she was, and told me that Richard had told her everything, and that she wasn't sure of the right approach to discuss with me. At that moment, I felt threatened. But to my surprise, she told me that she was not the scammer I thought she was. She promised that she could not do anything to harm Richard, and asked why I had my suspicions. Well, I was skeptical, wondering why she would bother to see me when she knew she was innocent of my accusations. But at the end of her visit, I began second-guessing my own thoughts. She was too nice and seemed like someone raised with money, with her grace and elegance. Then there was the fact that I did not detect any malice from her either. Did the guy on Facebook make up everything he said in his video because his girlfriend left him for someone better? Was I really sure that the woman in the video was even Amanda? There were minor differences like the shade of her eyes, her hair color, but I had thoughts, some lighting and hair dye had caused all of that, plus the makeup. The Amanda I met was almost fresh-faced, with barely any makeup. Sure, the internet had images and videos of women who had drastic transformations after applying makeup, but I doubted that was the case. I did not apologize to Amanda for my accusations, because I had to be sure before doing that. But our encounter had lessened my suspicions by a whole lot, and I began to really doubt myself while feeling embarrassed simultaneously. And I could only imagine how much Richard and his new wife laughed when talking about what I'd said to him over the phone. I really should have kept it all to myself, but the small part of me that cared about Richard did not let me. To further solidify my doubts, last I heard from my mother, Teresa had gloated about the huge amount of money Richard was about to earn after his investment. This was just yesterday, by the way. Richard had come out of a virtual meeting with Amanda's father, who had only met with him during the wedding, and he'd flown back to work soon after and had guided Richard during the investing, who was more than eager to make a bit of money. Richard worked in a tech company. I knew he was in charge of trainees when I last asked, and I heard him talking to Teresa one time about starting up something for himself. Perhaps this was why he got involved in buying stocks. While I was happy that Richard was not getting scammed by his new wife, I felt quite bad because things were going well for my ex-husband. He was earning more money, had married somebody much better than I was in a lot of areas, and had quickly gotten over me just like that. Like, I don't know, the last few years of our marriage did not even matter in the slightest. I guess they did not matter to him at all, and this time I won't ask for your advice. This was the closure I needed to move on with my life and forget both Richard and Teresa. I had let my bitterness and anger open up my eyes to things that weren't even real, just because I wished that they were. I don't know. I want to use this medium to tell anyone who's reading, and myself in particular, that I'm done with Richard. I'll ask my mom to help me move on from him, and I'm sure she'll happily take on that responsibility. She had liked Richard in the beginning until the day that she visited and found out how gray my marriage was. I can't write much more because I'm on the verge of tears at the moment. I'll most likely leave an update regarding my progress, but I don't know how soon that'll be or if the progress is even going to occur. My work and taking care of my mom have become my priorities now. So I'll do my hardest to make sure that I don't lose focus. Update number 3. Hey guys. The first 3 months after my last update were not so eventful, but afterwards, things took an absolute dramatic turn. Are you ready for this update? I did not know how hard it was going to be to actually leave Richard in my past. I found myself thinking about him many times, and my mom gave me a strange look when, anytime I asked for him, no matter how sly my methods were. But in the end, I got over it. My mom was with me most of the time, and she did a good job of filling the hole in my life. Another thing I did was focus on my growing business, and it's paid off. My mom was a huge help, especially when it came to getting clients. She took it upon herself to tell every single one of her contacts that I designed and made dresses, and of course, a number of them patronized me. To my joy, one of them actually contacted me. They said something along the lines of, she had a niece who loved one of my dresses and was willing to offer me a job in a well-paying fashion company. Wow, I actually got the news from the lady 2 weeks ago. And after a short interview a few days ago, I was all set. The only drawback was having to move out of the state, but I was fine with it. I had more than enough saved up to support my mom and me, and a good job was waiting for me if I left. If I ended up not liking my job, I could always continue with my business. It was a win-win for me and the breath of fresh air I'd been waiting for. But that's not the only interesting thing that happened to me this month. I'm not sure of the exact date, but almost 3 weeks ago, I saw Richard waiting outside my home. I'd walked right past him because, well, I didn't know what to say to him. But he followed me in. And when I finally decided to give him my attention, I noticed how terrible he looked. Without him telling me anything, I just knew my suspicions about Amanda were right. This time, I did not feel happy about it or sad either, I just felt pity. I decided to hear Richard out for the sake of our past relationship, and he did apologize multiple times, and I learned the whole story about Amanda. Richard was her third victim. She was the one who had wanted the small church wedding because it's easier for her to vanish that way. Her rich father was nothing more than her partner, and their company, it was non-existent. The more he talked, the more I wanted to give him a hug, and Amanda fooled everyone and was good at what she did. She had specific targets, people with small businesses or ones with a substantial amount of money in their bank accounts, and there was the fact that she was a manipulative liar. I asked about the rumor that I heard that he profited from the investment he made, and he said that was the case. He had invested a second time with almost all the money that he's gotten from the first investment, and that was the biggest mistake yet. Amanda just up and disappeared within that week. Richard cursed himself, saying that the signs were there and a few valuables went missing, and the week before his investment he had noticed that a few of her things were missing as well. When he asked, she told him that she had given them out because she had plans to get new stuff. Richard kept on just going with it, and while I still did not know his purpose for being here, I consoled him. Richard told me he needed someone to talk to, because Teresa was not even in the best state of mind either. I told him I understood, and after a while he asked if we could go out to dinner. I declined as politely as I could, and after some time Richard left. A few days later, Teresa called, apologizing to me and asking me to take Richard back. There was a time when I told myself that I'd gloat in Teresa's face if she ever apologized for anything, but I didn't even feel like it, and at the same time, I did not sympathize with her at all. She was the reason both her son and I were in this situation. She had caused havoc in my former marriage, and on top of that, had introduced Amanda to Richard without fully knowing who she was. I blatantly told Teresa that nothing would make me take Richard back into my life. She blamed it on herself. She even said that she put thoughts into Richard's head, but when I told her that Richard was an adult with a mind of his own, she stopped talking. After reminding her of everything she did to me, before, during, and after the span of my marriage, I wished her the best and ended the phone call. Richard sent a few gifts over, and I was quite surprised, because this was the first time in years that I've gotten something I did not ask for from him. Then, there was the fact that he was almost broke, unemployed. When he sent a third one over, some chocolates and flowers, I made sure to call him, telling him to stop sending me stuff. My mom also gave Richard a piece of her mind, and he finally left us alone. It's safe to say that the chapter of my life is officially closed now. I've been traveling with my mom next week, and I don't know if Richard is genuinely interested in a relationship with me or if I'll be willing to give him a chance sometime in the future. What I do know is that I'm not letting him into my life anytime soon, especially now that it's going so well and a new life awaits me, and I won't let anything try to destroy my chances at happiness.
I was so proud of OP for getting away from that toxic relationship until the very end of the story, where she says, I know for a fact that he's not going to be in my life right now, but I don't know if I'll give him a chance in the future. Why would you give him a chance in the future? He's shown who he is to you countless times. We're talking red flag after red flag. Listen to your mother's words, OP, and get the heck out of there. Let me know your thoughts though, guys. Drop it in the comment section down below. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate these sort of stories every single day. If you want more, you can check out the other channels. Find them in the description below. Once again, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and just remember one thing in this crazy world that we live in. It's cool to be kind. See ya!